Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story: my stepdad took my laptop, so I decided to take his car. The second story: don't park where you shouldn't, or something bad will happen. The third story: student forges passing grade, then gets caught and expelled, and it's glorious. Today's first story is: trick me out of my laptop, you'll give me your car. 13 years ago, I was in my late teens, living on my own and really struggling to live financially. One of the few possessions I had was an old laptop. My laptop had stopped working properly, and while I'm fairly proficient in using a computer, I had no idea about fixing them. I did a bit of searching on the internet, but couldn't get it working, so I asked my stepdad to take a look. He has a quick look and says it's effed, but he'll take it off my hands if I don't want it, so I said sure. If it's broken, then it's no good to me. 10 minutes later, I walk in the room and he's using it. I asked if he fixed it, and he says, yeah, thanks for the laptop. I was obviously peeved. My mom says she wasn't getting involved, and his only response was that he did a quick internet search to find the fix, and I could have done the same. I was broke and he took one of my only possessions, even though he had a PC and a laptop already. He did trick me. He knew what the fix was. I asked him to fix it, but he pretended it was broken, instead of helping me to get me to give it to him. A few months later, I was visiting my mom and stepdad when I had an idea. While I'm useless with computers, I'm very competent with mechanics, specifically Audis, and my stepdad had a 2001 Audi A3. Before coming in the house, I went under his car and unplugged the oil level sensor and a vac line for the turbo. Later on that day, he went to go to the shop or something. When he started the car, it threw up oil warning lights on the dash and wouldn't boost, so he turned it off and had a look of concern on his face. I went out to ask him what's up, and he said that something had gone majorly wrong. He says something along the lines of catastrophic turbo failure or engine failure. He's already spent quite a bit on repairs and didn't want to spend any more money on it, so spoke to my mom about just cutting his losses and scrapping it. I asked how much it's worth at the scrapyard, and he says 100 pounds, so I ever so graciously offer 120 pounds to take it off his hands, to maybe part it out, which he accepts. He signed over the logbook, title, and wrote me a receipt of purchase and handed the keys over. I walked outside, lifted the bonnet, pretended to look at my phone for a minute, went under the car and plugged the vac line and oil sensor back in, fired it straight up and drove around the block. When I got back, I gave him the thumbs up and said it's all fine now. His mouth was wide open and he was mega peeved, and my reply was, you could have found the solution too with a quick internet search. He tried arguing that it wasn't fair, and if it's working then I can't just take his car. But I just said he didn't have a problem tricking me out of my laptop, and that he's already signed the car over to me, so tough luck. My mom kinda laughed and said she's not getting involved, and that it was his own fault. I still have the car to this day, and it's practically in showroom condition and runs sweet. Haha, great story, pure revenge, and at the same time you did not violate anything. He gave you the car himself. My favorite part is when the OP said his stepfather looked at his face with concern when he saw some of the warning lights go out, and then the OP went to check what was going on. In retrospect, it's actually a good thing your mom didn't intervene to go to your side. If she had, you might not have had the opportunity to exercise your power and teach him a lesson. It's crap that you have a stepdad like that, but when life gives you lemons, you make lemon cheesecake. I think that SH was clever. Plus, a grown man scammed you when you were broke, and in your late teens. He just tried his own medicine. Did he ever fight with you about the situation, or did he just come to terms with what happened? The next story is: man gets car crushed. Cast: OP, me, female 5'11". Bob, friend store manager. Chief, my boss. Entitled jerk, who lost his car. Okay, background. I worked as a firefighter as an investigator for an independent department. For information, an investigator was the rank of LT, and was based out of a large station. 2 engines, 1 newer, 110 tower ladder truck, relative later, 1 chief car and 1 utility truck. Every day the food duties changed from firefighter to firefighter. My chief turns to cook when this happened. My friend Bob worked as a GM of a small grocery store. There was a long empty space in front of the store marked with the following sign: emergency vehicles only. Enter entitled jerk. He had a nice looking BMW car and always parked in the above spot every week. Bob told entitled jerk that he couldn't park there. I can park wherever I effing want. I make more in a day than you make in a week. My friend calls me complaining about entitled jerk. I agree to go and watch the spot. I get into our utility truck, which had the department decals on the door and a single red light on the dash. I park in the emergency vehicles only spot. As I'm walking in, I hear, "You can't park there, it's my special spot." I turn and look at Entitled Jerk. "Excuse me," I ask. "I'm on official duties and can park there." I pointed to the decal on the door. Entitled Jerk looks and says, "You can't be a firefighter. You're a girl. Move your truck and leave, C-word." Now, I'm proud of my job. In a department of 2,000, I was one of 5 women on the department. I graduated top of my class. I have a shocked-looking expression on my face. I get really peeved off. I walk into my friend's office to get more information about his problems with Entitled Jerk, as Bob explains the continuous parking violations, and I see a small notice on the fire suppression system, sprinklers, that said the inspection was coming up. I smile as I get an idea. Cue the revenge. I get some information, leave Bob's office and get into the truck heading back to the station. I arrive and head into my chief's office. I tell him of Entitled Jerk and what he said, and does. Chief is a 6'6", 320 Samoan. He sees everyone as family. Chief's face gets bright red. I explain my idea and he gets very happy. He rushes out and calls a station meeting. I lay out my idea. We send out the station to do a fire drill and inspection by sending the old truck and one engine to the store. My friend will call the station the next time Entitled Jerk parks in the fire lane. Skipped it 2 weeks later, Bob called the station stating that Entitled Jerk had just parked. As I'm thanking him, I hear his fire alarm go off. I rush and change into my investigator uniform with turnout gear, tell Chief and send the trucks out. I ride in the Quint. We arrive and I see Entitled Jerk's car right in the emergency vehicle spot. I radio to have one engine to pull right in front of Entitled Jerk's car, and the truck to park right beside the driver's side door. I get out and the engineer starts setting up the ladder, which means 4 very large and heavy support struts go down, and one crushes the front of his hood. The alarm goes off. The lineman breaks his windows as he runs the large 5-inch draft line from the pump to the standpipes, the fire access to the sprinkler system, through his front seats. I go in to find Bob hurriedly getting people out as the alarm is going off. Entitled Jerk runs out of the store, sees his car and goes ballistic. I radio the PD dispatch and request a few officers to the store, as I had a male was impeding a fire operation. The dispatcher says that they will send a few officers. 3 officers show up and I ask them to follow me. They do when I call out, "Hey, leave my firefighters alone." Entitled Jerk turns and sees me. He rushes up screaming that I'll pay for damaging his precious baby, his car. I stop him and tell him that if he didn't leave, that he would be arrested. He gets in my face. "You did this. I'll have your job for this." He then turns, pushing me back. The officers and I rush and tackle Entitled Jerk to the ground. After they cuff him, I calmly inform EB that he was under arrest for assault and interference with a fire investigation, and that his car would be towed for parking in a fire lane. I later found out that it was crushed. Entitled Jerk got 12 months probation for pushing me and interfering with a fire operation. He also got a fine of $500 for parking, the cost of the tow, and he lost his nice BMW. Moral of this story, don't park where you shouldn't or bad things will happen. This jerk got what he deserved, so it's all true. These signs exist for a reason, and the world does not revolve around one person. The fire department is an incredibly important service, and blocking a lane could have been fatal in the event of an actual fire or emergency. Well done, OP. Hahaha, considering how he bragged about his paycheck, you could have added another 0 or 2 at the end of the fine. This is one of those times I wished I could have been there to witness it. But yes, don't mess with firefighters. They're ruthless. Play silly games and win silly prizes. I'm curious on the insurance side. I wonder if his insurance paid out for destroying the car, minus his deductible, or if there's some exclusion they can specify that excludes payment in cases like this. I bet his insurance company denied him that as well. These cars may be losing value simply because they're no longer new, so maybe they paid the book value, minus the deductible, and left it upside down in the loan. The last story is, don't peeve off the person doing your evaluation. A fellow nurse was a preceptor for a nursing student. She's been off the last 2 weeks and I took over. I like to teach, and the students make it easier to get through the day, as they aren't jaded yet. The clinical teacher at the university gives me the student's contact information. I ask for his lesson plan or teaching objectives, and she says the student has it and will send it to me. Great. So contact the student I will call Brad. I ask for the information so I can plan out what he needs to see and do over the next 2 weeks so he can graduate. This is on a Friday, and he's supposed to start on Monday. He sends me nothing. I ask that he be there 30 minutes before shift so we can go over what that day's plan will be. He shows up 2 hours late saying he slept in. Not off to a great start. Asked for his lesson plans, what skills he needed to work on, what type of patients he needed to see, etc. He said he didn't have one. The last nurse gave him an evaluation, and that was all he needed to pass clinical, so he was just going to shadow me for 2 weeks and graduate. I've precepted before, and know this to be bullcrap. I contacted his clinical teacher and his previous preceptor. She filled out her evaluation and was going to fail him, but because the term wasn't over, left anything that wasn't completed blank, as he still had an opportunity to demonstrate knowledge, skill, and judgment in those areas over the next few weeks. The clinical teacher asked that I give the pass/fail evaluation and sent me all the paperwork. Brad, who's 22 and apparently knows everything, was informed daily, and I made a point of doing this daily, that I was willing to teach skills, answer questions, provide learning experiences with various procedures on whatever type of patient he needs. From children to geriatric, long-term illness to acute accidents. What you need, Brad, I got some behind curtain 3. Brad didn't want to learn or do anything, so he didn't. I had him for 10 days, and he was late 7 times, and spent most of his time getting garbage out of the vending machines and hanging out in the lounge. Even if he was inclined, I wouldn't let him near patients until he demonstrated he knew what he was doing. I would ask him how he would insert a catheter, IV, art line, etc., and he had no idea. I would go over a patient's meds and ask what they were and what they did. What's the mechanism of action of this med? What do we need to know before administering it, etc.? No idea. But he was smug, said he knew all this stuff and is just biding his time until graduation. It was an easy job. Girls can do it. Okay, I could have and probably should have told him I was doing his eval, but it must have slipped my tiny girl brain mind. I had been in contact with his clinical teacher about 3 times and letting her know exactly what's going on, and she said it was up to him to pass or fail. His last day was Friday, and today, Monday, I met his clinical teacher and went over my evaluation, pulling no punches. She wasn't surprised, as he had had problems before and was barely in the program, having failed once before. I'm asked to wait a few minutes and the clinical teacher leaves. A minute later, I see her walking with Brad past the office I'm in and go into a larger boardroom. I see him, he doesn't see me. About 10 minutes later, the dean of nursing, who I knew back when I was a student, greets me, and after a few warm words takes me into that boardroom. Well, it turns out that our boy Brad had gotten the evaluation from the previous preceptor and just filled in all the outstanding grades himself. No wonder this kid had no worries in the world. He turned a pail of white you only see in linen when he saw me. I handed him a copy of my evaluation that I had previously sent to the clinical teacher, and his face went from white to ashen to red in just seconds. Well, Brad not only failed the course, but was expelled from the program for breaching academic integrity and fraud or something like that. It's a good thing he knows everything, because that will help him with whatever he plans to do next, because it won't be nursing. You saved people from such an unprofessional worker. Very glad he doesn't work with patients and that he was expelled. My country is so desperate for nurses that they miss people who don't want to learn. I had a dude in my class who slept through every class and didn't study. He was once asked what diabetes was. We're in year 3 of 3, and he had no idea. He was expelled, and after that, the student became afraid to and study subjects. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a good day.